TomoNews presents Chainsaws.
A psychologist in Mexico decapitates her husband and spreads his body parts around the city. A psychologist in Mexico is being accused of murdering her husband by decapitating him before spreading parts of the rest of his body around Mexico City. Maria Alejandra Lafuente Caso, who claimed she was abused by her husband, reportedly drugged him by adding sleeping pills to his drink before using a chainsaw to decapitate him and cut up the body. The various body parts were placed in different locations around Mexico City. An investigation was launched after children discovered the head while playing at a local park. Caso allegedly sent messages to her husband's family after he was killed to fool them into thinking he was still alive. A forensic investigation in her home revealed traces of blood, bone, and flesh in the bathroom and in the carpets. Caso reportedly tried to use her experience as a psychologist to claim a mental illness so she would not have to stand trial. However, a doctor determined that she was completely sane.
Guy scares the bejesus out of friend with chainsaw prank. Tom and his best friend Marius were on a road trip from Norway to Sweden on Sunday. When they decided to stop at the side of the road to rest. Tom waited until Marius fell asleep, then he snuck behind the trunk and pulled out a chainsaw. The chainsaw, of course, doesn't have a blade, but Marius doesn't know this. Marius said he thought he was going to die until he realized it was his friend Tom. Marius told Norway's Dagbladet newspaper that he plans to get revenge on Tom. He says he already has some ideas, but he's welcome to suggestions from other people.
Czech zoo removes rhino's horns. A zoo in the Czech Republic will dehorn its rhinos to protect the animals from poachers. The drastic move comes in response to a brutal attack at a French zoo last week when poachers killed a white rhino, then tried to hack its horn off with a chainsaw. The zoo in the central Czech Republic said it will first administer an anesthetic before cutting the horns of its 18 adult rhinos. With the rhino's eyes and ears covered, a chainsaw will cut horizontally into the horn to remove it. Rhino horn is made of a fibrous protein called keratin, the same substance humans produce in our nails and hair. When the horns are removed, the zoo will file the sharp edges to smooth them down. Last week, poachers killed Vince the white rhino at a zoo near Paris, but failed to get away with his horn. Rhino horn sells for around $60,000 per kilo on the black market, making it more expensive than gold or cocaine. Most of the demand comes from China and Vietnam, where rhino horn is prized for its supposed, but completely unproven, value as an aphrodisiac and ingredient in traditional medicine.
Grandpa accidentally chainsaws face, drives himself to the hospital. Bill Singleton is the clear frontrunner for Badass Senior Citizen of the Year. On May 6th, the 68-year-old Australian man was at his property trimming some branches off a shrub when the chainsaw he was using accidentally bumped a tree trunk and suddenly kicked back. Before he knew it, the chainsaw had ripped across his face and through his bottom jaw. He wasn't able to call for help because he'd sliced off half his tongue in the process. Bleeding profusely, he quickly wrapped a towel around his head to keep his face intact and jumped in his car, driving 25 kilometers to the nearest medical center. When he arrived at the hospital, doctors initially thought he'd suffered a gunshot wound to the face. Just check out these gnarly x-rays. Stitching up his wounds that ran as far back as his wisdom teeth, surgeons found he missed his carotid artery, which supplies blood to the brain, by a single centimeter. Singleton won't be able to eat solid foods until he can get replacement front teeth a year from now, but at least he's earned the toughest man in town title, and it's safe to say no one's topping that.
Unpaid construction workers take chainsaw to building site. A pair of builders down under used chainsaws to rip through a partially built house under construction and filmed it on video as revenge for not being paid on time. The video posted to Facebook on the Uptrend Engineering and Construction page starts with the image of a chainsaw and reads, "Builders who don't want to pay invoices." It then cuts away and shows one construction worker slicing through several wooden supports throughout a housing framework. The caption, "We'll learn the hard way," then appears on the screen. The footage then shows a second construction worker ripping through the house in a similar fashion. It looks like both these guys hadn't been paid on time by their boss, so they did what any reasonable person would do and chainsawed everything instead. Wonder when they're gonna get paid now.
Tree trimmer survives chainsaw to the neck. 21-year-old James Valentine is a very lucky man. Not many people can claim to have had a fight with a chainsaw and won. Valentine was trimming branches while hanging from a tree along the Perry Highway in Pennsylvania's Ross Township on Monday when the chainsaw suddenly kicked back and became embedded in his neck. Showing maturity beyond his years, Valentine then coolly switched off the chainsaw and slowly descended from the tree with the help of a colleague, all the time holding the blade steady in his neck to prevent excess bleeding. Once on the ground, emergency crews removed the engine of the chainsaw and loaded Valentine into an ambulance for the trip to Allegheny General Hospital, where the blade was removed during surgery. Doctors said Valentine was extremely lucky as the blade missed all his major blood vessels, damaging only muscle and tissue. He's expected to make a full recovery.
French-Canadian driver threatens family with a chainsaw over road rage incident. A crazy driver in Saint Jerome, Quebec, was caught on camera yelling taunts and revving his chainsaw at a family as he stood outside their car. On Sunday evening, a couple and 2 young children were driving back from a family holiday when they were cut off by a minivan with an infant in the back seat. According to the couple, the minivan was driving so dangerously that they decided to follow the vehicle and report its driver to the police. The minivan eventually drove to a dead end. The couple's car was blocking the only exit, so the driver of the minivan got out of his vehicle and took out his chainsaw from the back seat. The 37-year-old chainsaw-wielding maniac was arrested at his home the next day and is awaiting trial. He has no prior arrests, but maybe he'll think twice before threatening an innocent family with a deadly power tool.
Pennsylvania couple's chainsaw-mutilated bodies found by son. 48-year-old Chris Peppelman and his wife Nicole Peppelman were found dead in their home on Tuesday afternoon. The couple's 14-year-old son says he found the pair unresponsive and with grievous chainsaw injuries at around 12:50 p.m. Could this be the work of a Pennsylvanian Leatherface? Neighbours said the couple were lovely and great neighbours, however things at home may not have been so perfect. According to neighbours, the Peppelmans were having trouble with their marriage, and police records revealed prior domestic disturbances at their home. Nicole had apparently moved out with their 3 sons. Investigators have only confirmed Nicole's death as a homicide, suggesting this could have been a murder-suicide. A chainsaw was recovered at the house. Investigators are not seeking any suspects in this case. An autopsy on the couple is scheduled for Wednesday.
A drunk Australian teenager went on a late-night chainsaw rampage inside a gas station with a flower pot on his head at 4:30 a.m. on Monday. 2 workers at a 7-Eleven in Ipswich in Queensland were cleaning the coffee machine when the man rushed into the store with a chainsaw. He used the chainsaw to damage a window and several display racks. Then he dropped his trousers and ruined the clerks. They were terrified and retreated to the back room to call police. When Flower Pot had fled the scene, he damaged the parked car. It is believed the man wore the flower pot to conceal his identity. Police say he demanded money, but only grabbed a soft drink and his chainsaw when he left.
Man rescued from restaurant wall had been living in the ceiling for weeks. This is Stephen Graves, a 36-year-old Denver man who had to be rescued from a wall of a downtown restaurant after he fell 20 feet from where he'd been living in the ceiling. On December 10th around midnight, yard house workers reportedly saw Stephen fall through the ceiling. They were stunned and didn't catch him, and instead they watched as he ran through the ceiling rafters. When police were called in to investigate, they found a box where he'd been living and tons of wine corks, but no Stephen. They spent hours searching for him until they finally heard moaning coming from the wall near the door. They removed a booth seat to find Stephen's foot sticking out from the wall, so naturally, a firefighter grabbed his chainsaw and got to work. One witness said paramedics were stabbing a tranquilizer into the wall to calm Stephen while they rescued him. They eventually got him out on a stretcher, but that's not even the end of it. Pam Clough was staying in the hotel right next to the restaurant.
A homeless man living in the rafters of this restaurant tripped the fire sprinkler system, and it's just started flooding, like it just going everywhere.
The water damage to the restaurant and the hotel came in at $100,000, so it seems that Stephen's $7,000 bail is the least of his financial problems. He's also facing burglary and criminal mischief charges.
This cartoon character defeats his enemies by poking their asses, kind of like how one intoxicated Chinese guy was defeated recently. A drunk Mr. Peng said he was heading home after a drinking session with his friend. After finding that he had forgotten his key, he decided to climb over his neighbor's wall. But it was really dark and he didn't notice the huge rake on the other side of the wall. So he got a surprise as he jumped down from the wall and landed smack on top of it. The rake handle penetrated about 20 centimeters into the man's anus. Rescue workers used a chainsaw to cut off the rake. But did Mr. Peng really land on the stick as part of some bizarre drunken miscalculation? Or did his anal accident occur out of a desire for some sick kind of poop hole pleasure? You decide.